And we're live. Welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pierre-Etienne. I'm the founder of the Healing Studio Online. I'm a mind-body practitioner specialized in stress management and trauma recovery through nervous system regulation. And today I will be in conversation with the talented Mrs. Amari Dior, who's a pain management coach, or she's a coach, life coach specialized in chronic pain management. And today specifically, we're going to talk about nerve pain. So stick around. We are right now about to start in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to wait for Amari to join us. Please set yourself up with some water. Give yourself a little stretch. Take a breath. All right. Welcome everybody. And so today, as mentioned previously, a few moments ago, we're going to discuss how to manage nerve pain, neuropathic pain, and how to find some comforts or how to manage the pain and the discomfort. And if you're all ready, let's just take a couple of breaths here together as I'm waiting for Amari to join us. Hi Rina, Sukun Holistics. How you doing? And so as a reminder, every Tuesday at this time, 8 a.m., 8 to 8:30, we take about 20 to 30 minutes for us to get together with Amari and to discuss topics related to pain, different tools, different ways to approach pain. Stroll back in the Healing Studio Online feeds and you'll find already a couple of conversations on different topics. Last week we talked about COVID-19 pain or COVID-19 related pain, what it's like, what does it feel like, how to manage it. And today we're going to talk about specifically neuropathic pain. All right. So Amari's here. I'll let her in on this live.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm just putting in our chat the title for
Awesome.
today.
So please do so, and I'll pin it.
All right.
Mind-body methods for nerve pain. Let me pin that comment here.
Thank you.
Here you go. Welcome, newborn JJ. Welcome.
Welcome.
All right, so how are you doing, Amari?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm excited to be talking about this topic today. How about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, same. That hits home. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what this takes us. And so as a reminder, so let's get started here. Today we are discussing mind-body methods for nerve pain. Well, let's talk about nerve pain and ways to approach nerve pain. Knowing that it is about techniques and methods. I think it is also about perspective and understanding what it is, or at least I'll speak for myself. Understanding what it is helped me to engage with it. So we'll take some time to talk about that today. Before we start, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to
I
the
would love
audience?
Thank you. So, my name is Amari. I am a chronic pain coach. I'm a life coach and health coach that helps people better manage their pain, understand their pain, and make more proactive decisions with mind body techniques and mindfulness methods. And my at name is Body and More Wellness. You can find more information about what I do and also methods to help chronic pain if you have chronic pain or if you have a loved one that has chronic pain.
Thank you, Amari. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pierre-Etienne Vanier. I'm a mind-body practitioner specialized in nervous system regulation, using mind-body practices. And most of my work for the past 17 years has been with people living with HIV, AIDS, and cancer. Talk about nerve pain. So why don't we start by maybe describing and explaining a little bit what nerve pain is. Again, there's no fixed agenda for that conversation, which will take about 20 to 30 minutes here. We'll keep it relatively short and condensed and to the point. And so if that's okay with you, Amari, I'd like maybe for us to explain what is nerve pain, what is your and my relationship to nerve pain, and also potentially, how we've worked with clients dealing with neuropathic pain, and then maybe ways and obviously I don't, I personally don't pretend that, within the next 20 minutes, we're going to tell you how to just deal with it and then you're done. It is a journey. That's an understatement, but potentially, sharing a few things as to what to do. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So would you like me to start, or would you like to start as to how to, without going too deep into the definition, maybe explaining what nerve pain is?
Sure. So I can go ahead and start, and then we can just bounce off of each other. So nerve pain for me, what I learned in school was any shooting, stabbing pain. Sometimes it can feel like an electric shock in your body, and a lot of times with the studies that I've had in school. When I studied for exercise science and biosciences in university, and just in my own experience with medical practitioners that were helping me with my chronic back pain and neck pain after an accident, they explained it, it's happening because you have a pinched nerve, or you may have nerve damage, or it might be inflammation that is pressing on the nerve, or a structural issue that is causing the nerve to be pinched. All these things, and that's basically what happens. And then on the other side of that, if it's not a structural issue, it could be due to drugs, or it could be due to medical drugs or drugs, and it could be due to certain immune deficiencies and diseases like MS, or even diabetes and HIV that could cause that nerve pain.
Right. So we're talking about disease, injury, infections, loss of limb, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can also happen. And so, and like you mentioned, for me, what's also really both interesting and really frustrating is that at times the treatments can very well be responsible, right, for that neuropathic pain. Nerve pain, neuropathic pain, right? This is the same thing. And I'm talking as somebody who's been working for a long time with people dealing with HIV. So whether we're talking about ARVs, antiretroviral treatment, whether we're talking about chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and so on and so forth, these treatments quite often actually will create damage and will create that nerve pain. And so I see that really as for the past 8 years, I've been working with people, primarily with people dealing with cancer. And oftentimes the cancer may be located in a place, the tumor located in a place that will push, on the surrounding nerves and so on and so forth. But oftentimes, actually, the actual treatment will create that nerve damage. And I know for me, my personal relationship with nerve damage is because of accident. I've had a motorbike accident. What was that, like 20 something years ago. And since then, right, I've been dealing with that. And so to recap what you've mentioned earlier, in terms of symptoms and what does that look like? How do I know I'm dealing with neuropathic pain, nerve pain? Right, we talked about shooting, burning, stabbing pain. Many people are experiencing numbness, tingling, right, with the typical pins and needles, difficulty resting, difficulty sleeping, restlessness, this sensation of unpleasantness, abnormalness, if that's a word. I know for me, last week we talked about my personal experience with COVID and your husband's experience with COVID that also brought some pain. I know for me, when I mentioned last week during our live that my skin felt like it was on fire, like and that's what can be so exhausting to people, and I'm grateful that for me it was just temporary because of COVID, that I had such an intense nerve pain. But the slightest thing that may feel very pleasant, like just somebody caressing your arm or just a breeze on your skin, I know for me in that moment and for many of my patients can actually be a source of discomfort or straight up pain.
Right.
Right. So this is what we're talking about here, and what it means. And I do want to mention here that this is very common. Like for those of you watching us and being like, oh my God, like yeah, this is this is what I've experienced. Is it just me? That one in three, and let's talk about the US here. 1 in 3 Americans experience chronic pain. 1 in 5 Americans experience nerve pain.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people, right?
So many people.
That's a lot of people. They said as many as a lot of, here. I'm quoting a study from 2013 saying as many as 10% of Americans experience some form of neuropathic pain. And so, to anybody who's like, oh, my goodness, I feel, what's wrong with me? What's happening? Know that, again, nerve pain happens to a lot of people. And there's things that you can do. So I'm taking here to the chat if there is any questions, comments, people watching us live or afterwards, if you're watching that replay and there's something that comes up, please feel free to drop in the comments before we continue that conversation. As a reminder, I'm in conversation with Amari and Pierre, who's a pain management coach located in California, Marina del Rey. And I'm Pierre-Etienne, the founder of the Healing Studio Online, mind-body practitioner, specialized also in nervous system regulation. And we're talking about nerve pain. So we've talked about what it feels like. We've talked about, how common that is. Shall we talk about ways to deal with, shall we take some time right now? Is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we move on into potential ways to deal with it?
I think we've covered what it is. I am really excited to talk more about what that experience can be, and what that experience was for myself personally.
Mm-hmm. You mean to live with it?
Yeah, to live with it.
Would you like to? So go ahead.
Yeah. So most of my followers know, just from my webinars that I do weekly, and then also any of my clients, I share with them my personal journey, just in a way to inspire them and help them find their own way. And for me, my nerve pain and my chronic pain started 4 years ago when a wall came crashing down on top of me. And um, I didn't recover as easily as I did with my previous accidents and sports injuries and whatnot. And I was experiencing, the doctor told me you have a structural issue, you have inflammation, that's pinching two nerves, and that's what's explaining your legs going out after certain levels of activity. My legs would just go numb. I couldn't move them, and that would last for over an hour. I would just be on the floor, and thank you. And it was really hard for me because one, I was in denial because I had doctors and I had people around me that's like, you're too young to feel this pain, and are you sure you can't fix it? And it was frustrating for me. And I was going through these emotions that I was not really acknowledging. And I was, for example, I would be in the bathroom, legs completely not working, and I would have this rush of overwhelm and rush of frustration and being upset and trying to put all the blame on anything that I could. And I was upset. I had negative self-talk. I was doubting myself, doubting my worth, doubting my relevance. And it would cause what I found later after studying to be a health coach and life coach and naturopathic counselor was that those emotions, when I am so intense in those emotions, but not doing anything about it and festering in it and in a negative cycle, then it actually was causing me to have a longer period of flare-up. And that nerve pain was worse and worse and worse. And it was like the worse my emotions felt, the more intense they were, the more intense the nerve pain was. And it was a really negative cycle. And until I did the work, and it took me a while to have radical acceptance, really accept, all right, this is my life right now. What am I going to do about it? And it took me to start journaling, and journaling not just, oh, what I did today, but journaling every activity, every emotion, every thought to really change that self-talk and also understand what my body was alerting me for, when it was feeling unsafe, when it was feeling threatened, when I was doing things that weren't healthy to my mind, body, and spirit, and listening to those signals. And once I started journaling and incorporating mindful movement, incorporating mind body techniques like breath work and meditation and worship, then I started to be able to change the way I thought about myself, the way I thought about my pain experience. And it started off with that flare up going down to 55 minutes instead of an hour and a half. And I was like, whoa, I've done something here. But it had been a very long time. And I was reading an article just recently on the Healthline about how our emotions, when they're so intense, they can become trapped in our body. And I really resonated with that. And that's something that I've learned from Johnny Sarno and multiple mind, body, and chronic pain books. But it just reminded me, and I wanted to share that today because emotions can really get trapped in your body. And a part of that muscle tension and that inflammation is what can also be critical in the health of your nerves. And it can affect the pain experience. And when we feel, and I'm saying we because I mean when I felt that chronic pain for years and years, I didn't only feel chronic physical pain, but I also felt chronic emotional pain and mental pain and spiritual pain. And I had a lot of blockage in my body of emotions, and I felt unsafe to express them. And when I did express them in rage and impatience and being judgmental about my having these feelings, then my pain was worse. But when I practiced patience, when I just acknowledged that they were there, it's okay for them to be there, taking radical acceptance of my situation, then I was able to turn it around. Even if it was just a smidget, it meant the world to me that it was no longer an hour.
Oh.
Yeah?
Yeah. Sorry. I thought, I just wanted to thank you for I mean, there's just so much to what you just shared right now. But I'd like maybe to just reflect on a couple of things, if you allow me. Number one is that there is no such thing as purely physical pain. I've taught pain management to nurses and to medical staff, and it's amazing how we've compartmentalized life so much that we think at times like, oh, I have that pain in my knee, in my arms, in this part of my body, but it's just my body. Is it? Because I know I get amazingly frustrated. Like 2 weeks ago, was that 2 weeks ago, right? When my old pain came back and I found myself just laying in bed. Despair is the word that comes to mind right now as I'm thinking about it. It was the third night of sleeplessness or sleeping in pain, and I remember there was despair, there was anger, there was all of these emotions. And so I'm reminding myself, you, and all our viewers that how you approach your pain, let's consider emotions, right? In this, I feel sad. I know we're going to come to the methods and the practices in a few moments, but I also get frustrated because when you read, whether it's Healthline, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, like most of them are talking about over-the-counter medication, prescription medication, antidepressant drugs, anticonvulsants, nerve blocks, like devices, implantable devices, and so on. And then at the end of the list is like, well, lifestyle changes, right? Or breathing, or like how is work, right? With like, are you under stress? Like, and I found that so amazingly short-sighted that we've come to a point where it's just like, how can we like just say, okay, we're just gonna like remove, or something hurts, we're just gonna remove it, right? And whether it's like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, nerve pain, like we're just gonna make this pain go away. Can we recognize that this pain is just a signal as part of a bigger message?
Exactly.
Right? And there's strong emotions attached to it, and as long as we don't address the emotions, like you said, everything gets stuck in the body. And that's, is this making sense?
That makes total sense. I am on the same page as you.
So I also want to, and so welcoming here Zane, welcoming Jordan, Kathleen, welcoming Cheryl. Quick reminder, Amari, Dior, and myself, Pierre-Etienne Vanier, were in a conversation on nerve pain. And if you allow me to summarize the kind of steps here that I heard you talk about, or at least the steps that resonated with me as also my own approach for my own pain, and also the approach for whether I teach pain management to medical staff, or I teach pain management to people dealing with chronic pain. For me, there's 2 to 3 steps, which are steps that we've talked about before. You mentioned acknowledgements, right, earlier. And as simple as it may seem, how many of us are in denial? How many of us are in denial that I'm in pain and I hate it, and I want to move on with my life, and I'm just going to pretend it's not there? And I'm saying because I've done that so many times, and my back hurts, and my back was saying, hey, if we keep pushing, I don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I want to go out with my friends. I have this report to finish and so on and so forth. And then what would happen? Like a day or 2 or 3 or 7 days later, boom, I would find myself paralyzed on the floor, unable to speak, unable to move, like, you know, in so much pain, because my body has sent me the signals, but I would not acknowledge the signals. And the later we acknowledge the signals, the more work there is to do for us to reclaim that sense of safety, do this work. So number one, acknowledgement. Number two, you talked about that lack of that, not the lack, but before I feel like doing the work, or maybe the first step of that work for me, as far as I'm concerned, once you've acknowledged that there's something going on, that I'm in pain, there's something that needs to be addressed, my body's calling me to do something. For me, that judgments at times kicking is like, it's so strong. Like, how come? I should be recovered.
Yeah.
It's been that many months, years. I'm not, and you said it. Even the people like the feedback that you shared earlier as to like, well, you're young and you shouldn't be feeling this, or you should be feeling this. I find it's amazing that you were told that. I'm not surprised. I find it amazing because I have a lot of people who are being told like, yeah, that's weird. You should. How come you're not feeling better already? And I'm like, wow, this is not helpful. Comment, right? So this is frustrating. So dealing with that judgment, I think, is you've mentioned that term radical acceptance, which I think is tremendously helpful and challenging, right? How can I sit with myself? And I'm saying that as a person who's been dealing with chronic pain for a long time. How can I sit with myself and say, right now I'm in pain, and this is what I need to deal with. This is what I need to work on, right? And it seems so simple, but like you said, the frustration, the judgment, the guilt, the shame, and so on and so forth will just further bring me down. Like they will just make things worse because these emotions, like emotions and body, all one, right? Yes. So that judgment, that frustration, that anger, guess what? It's just gonna make it worse, right? Because it's just like, for me, I think about, I may have used that image before, I think about my body or our bodies as almost like kids who just live in the moment. They're not thinking about the future or the past, and sometimes they're gonna throw a tantrum. And yelling at that kid is not going to help that kid feel safer, feel better, right? When I tell my body to shut up because I need to move on, this is not helping with the pain. It's just pushing the pain down. And just like when I tell my 10 or 11-year-old who's throwing a tantrum, just, stop crying, stop doing this, just, I'm basically telling him or her, my kids, push it down. Am I helping them to resolve the issue? I'm not. I'm just telling them, well, just push it down. I don't want to hear it, but most likely you'll have to deal with it later because it's not going anywhere, right? So we've talked about acknowledgement. Number two, we're talking about dealing with that judgment, dealing with emotions. And maybe, and number three, you talked about doing the work, right? And I think it is doing the work. I think acknowledging it, dealing with that judgment, with the emotion, are part of the work. But I think a lot of people consider doing the work as like, well, what is the technique, right? What is it that I can do? What is the magic pill, the magic wand, right? That can help me to make it disappear suddenly. And I have a couple of things I want to share here. I'm just wondering if there's anything you wanted to reflect on or comment on as what I just shared.
Yeah, you know what? I love the analogy that you used as far as our bodies treat them like your children, because we cannot suppress those emotions. We can't suppress the experience because the only thing that will happen is it will hurt us later down in the line, and it will cause a big T trauma when it could have been dealt with when it was small. So I really appreciate that analogy. I like that analogy. I might use that analogy if I have your permission. I like that. Um, and I do agree. It took me so much work to just get to the acceptance, to just get to being non-judgmental and having that patience and returning love to myself. It took a very long time because denial was one of the things that I believe was a part of my stressor and my trigger. It was definitely a trigger for me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And just to go back to that image of our bodies are like young children, I'm reflecting as a father, also how can, do I still love my kids when they're throwing a tantrum? Yes, I do. Right? Do I like them in that moment? I don't know. They're annoying, and maybe they have good reasons to be, but in that moment, I don't like them, but I love them. And I think it's the same. I'm trying, as I was sitting in bed a couple of weeks ago in pain, I was trying to work on that. And I was saying, look, we don't like each other right now. You yelling at me, I'm yelling at you. And as crazy as it may seem, when I was actually saying, I may not like you right now, but I still love you, and we're in this together. And believe it or not, like, I mean, I know you know that. That's when my body was like, okay,
You heard
because
me.
the judgment was going
Yeah.
away. The judgment
Yeah.
was going away, and it's just like me telling my kids, you're bugging me right now. I love you to death, right?
Yeah.
I would give my life for you in a second without a second thought. And yet, right now, you're bugging me. And I think it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
We've talked about, positive thinking and the problem with people
Exactly.
who are, especially in the constant state of pain, and we're being told just, keep it up, stay positive.
Yeah.
And I think that prevents us, that contributes to the denial, that contributes
Right.
to the disconnect between the reality of what I'm experiencing. And the moment when I'm able to say, I don't feel good right now, I actually feel like crap, I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm depressed. Well, believe it, like what happens? Okay, there's a coming home, there's an alignment, there's a sense of, yes, this is what's happening. Now there's an acknowledgement, now there's an acceptance. What can we do, right? There's kind of an opening for us to actually engage, because before that, as long as I'm not in conversation with my body, this whatever I do is not gonna do anything. If I keep
Exactly.
yelling at my kid's not gonna listen to me. They shut down,
Right.
right? My body shut down. So we're reopening that myself to that conversation, and potentially to some practices that can be helpful. I think that's is a crucial step.
Right.
So shall we talk about a couple of, just a few things, understanding that maybe let's take maybe another 5 or 10 minutes before we wrap it up. What's been helpful for you? What are the mind body methods that and there's a lot of things out there that can be done. Again, I've mentioned earlier that when you do research, most mainstream articles will tell you, well, take meds, take over-the-counter prescription, antidepressants, implant devices in your body, and so on and so forth. And yet, no, there's also things that are non-invasive, or that may not contribute to, getting you addicted. And I'm saying that knowing that it can be very helpful. And I know many of my clients, have used these practices. What I'm saying is that these are not the only ways. These are not the only methods to deal with that pain. So would you like to share a little bit more about what was helpful for you?
Sure. Yes. So I think there are a couple of key ingredients or tools to my toolbox as far as being able to find that connection between my mind and body, and to be able to listen in a way where I can make informed decisions as far as what I need. And that first came from I started waking up earlier in the morning and doing meditation, breath work, um, mindful movement, and I'll explain that, and prayer. Because these things were the things that helped me mentally, physically, and emotionally, and spiritually. And doing these things, the mindful movement, it was listening to my body. Okay, where are you truly feeling the aches? I can't just say I have aches all over my body, but what feels good today, you know? And doing that prayer and worship to make myself remember that I am loved, and to be able to give myself love and grace throughout the day. Starting that off. The breath work was really big for me because I learned that breath work, when you're able to, I do it with a VOO sound. But when I'm able to exhale and make a sound, I feel vibration in my chest. I feel warmth. I feel it through my belly. And that in itself, I've learned can regenerate that nervous system and cause me to really down regulate and come back to calm, come back to center, and recognize what I'm feeling, and even recognize my thoughts. And to get to those points, I had to start journaling 3-4 years ago and understand, okay, this is what's happening to my body. These are the emotions that are, this is my emotional response. This is my physical sensation. This is what I did about it. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. And that's when I came to realize, okay, these are the 4 ingredients that help me. But I had to put in the daily work 3 times a day to understand my body and understand those signals before I was able to come to the conclusion that, okay, these 4 methods need to be a part of my day every single day, so I can understand those signals and I can be prepared for those signals, and I can pour out of my stress threshold cup.
Right.
How about you?
Yeah. So can you just recap these 4 for people to
Yes, yes. Okay, so there's prayer and worship, breath work, meditation, and mindful movement.
Awesome. Beautiful. And yeah, and I resonate with all of these. All of these have been part of my journey. And I want to share a couple of tools here with people. Before I do so, I just wanted to reflect briefly on what you mentioned earlier around progress, and I just want to remind myself, you and the viewers, that progress and pain and dealing with pain is not a linear process.
Nope.
And I'm saying that because sometimes I'm like, ooh, I feel a little better today, so tomorrow I should feel even better. And I'm saying that because so many times I was like, oh, I'm on a good streak. I'm on a good streak. That's it. And then, right, I would have a flare up because guess what? Because I had an argument with my spouse, because financial stress, because the world keeps on turning. And so I know at some point I would really find myself questioning, and I was like, oh no, and because I was stuck and overwhelmed, then the whole, I'm starting from scratch and nothing works, and it's so hard when I'm in it to actually acknowledge that all these statements are actually not true. like I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, a lot of support. And I think it was for me the acceptance of the fact that pain comes back because there's still things for me to learn from.
Yes.
That, like, there's still a message there, right? And I'm saying that freshly recovered from COVID 2 weeks ago, which brought back some pain that I hadn't felt in years, which is challenging me to my core. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go back deep, right? I'm going to continue to go there. So let's just a reminder that here progress is not linear, progress is cyclical. And what I always repeat to myself and to my clients is that as long as there's the tiniest progress, the tiniest improvement, we can replicate that and we can build on that.
Yeah.
And so I want people to hear it, that even for a few seconds, for a few moments, you're able to feel a sense of relief. I'm not saying feeling like there's zero pain, maybe even if it's just a little less, right? You can replicate that, right? And that's really important to remember that.
Absolutely.
So let me just share before we just keeping track of time here, yeah, because there's another class coming up. Just looking at the chat here, Jordan mentioning great methods to really understand your body at every stage. Love that you journal to find your process. Yeah, right. Self-awareness, and definitely. And my spiritual teachers would say, just write it down. You know, use the pen. Like just write it down. There's power in it. I think we've lost it with all our devices, and grab a pen and write it down. So for me, there's two things that I want to mention briefly before we wrap it up. In terms of stories, mainly when I was teaching, and related to my own personal experience of recovering from pain or managing my pain or surfing that pain. But there's two short stories that I want to mention. You know, the first one is related to a body-oriented practice. You talked about movement. You talked about engaging with the body. I remember once I've been working with Huntington Hospital in Pasadena, California, for the past 8 years with the Cancer Center, and I've been offering body-oriented classes, more specifically classes around therapeutic tremors, which we've already talked about in previous live talks. And so therapeutic tremors are a natural mechanism in the body, and it's basically learning how to turn on gentle vibrations in the body designed to settle your nervous system, right? So when we talk about frustration, anger, and so on and so forth, we're talking about a constriction. These vibrations actually help us to reverse engineer that response to kind of release, to kind of find that sense of relief, and it's beautiful for chronic pain. And I know for me, I usually always use it, but the story I wanted to mention is that I was in a group. I was teaching a group at Huntington Hospital, cancer patients, including quite a few people in treatments, and some people were done with treatments. And at the end of the class, I remember somebody who had been practicing for a few weeks started to cry as she was sharing, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And this was actually tears of gratitude. She was like, I can actually feel my hands. She was like, while we were doing the tremors, I felt some pop, and now I'm actually regaining some senses I can sense in my hands, and to me, in my hand. And to me, she started to cry. Some other people started to cry. And that was beautiful, because for her, I'm convinced, right? Even though there is still very little research on these approaches, because guess what? There's nothing else to sell afterwards, right? So there is no money in it, which is why there is very little research on it. Even though some, like the U.S. Military and other like big administrations and organizations are doing research on that, because they realize it's very helpful for PTSD and pain management. But in that moment, that lady and so many other people that I've worked with, right, were able to say, oh, I'm actually more connected to my body. I can feel things, right? That tingling is less. So I've heard that so many times, right? So the therapeutic tremors are one way to approach it, because they're really a non-cognitive approach to coming back into the body in a gentle, self-managed, non-pharmacological way. That's the first one. The second one, I remember as I was teaching, again, a group of people also dealing with cancer. And I think there was a talk specifically about pain management. And I was basically demonstrating different techniques And that particular technique comes from neuro linguistic programming, NLP, which is some kind of form of hypnosis, if you will. And that particular process, which is also something I was using in my bed 2 weeks ago while I was laying in pain, consists in basically imagining or concretizing the pain. You were talking about earlier how some people sometimes are like, it just hurts everywhere.
Yeah.
Or it feels like stabbing and it feels like pins and needles. And I remember I was literally, let's call her Anita. I was working with Anita and she was like, you know, pins and needles in my hands, and like eight to 9 on a scale of 10. And I remember I invited her, instead of first invited her to pay attention to it, to try to see if she could acknowledge it without any judgment. And then what we started to do, we started to change what we call submodalities. What are the features of these sensations? For example, if you were to give it a color, if you were to give it a shape, if you were to give it, like, is there movement to it? And so I remember her mentioning, well, these are really sharp, long needles, right, that are coming through, and so on and so forth. And so what we did, we started to replace one by one, and frankly, it took about a couple of minutes, right? We went, okay, instead of black, if there was a more comfortable color, what would that be? That would be yellow. Okay, instead of needles, what could it be? Well, it could be spaghetti. All right, spaghettis. Okay. Instead of, and so she started to play with that, right? She had her eyes open. There was nothing magical about it. She was just looking at me. We were just having a conversation. Every time I was like, okay, in your mind, can you imagine or visualize, if you're a visual person, that, you know, it's going from these black, sharp, hard needles to these loose, yellow spaghettis, and so on and so forth. And we were about 15 people in the room. And I kid you not, within 2 minutes, then I was like, all right, we can have done changing all these submodalities. Please check in with yourself. Where are you? And she's like, I'm at a 1, right? It took 2 minutes. It took 2 minutes. So I'm not saying here, that's my disclaimer. I'm not saying it works with everybody every time. Nothing does, right? In the words of one of my mentors, like, even death doesn't work at times. Some people died and came back, right? So there's nothing that's 100%. I'm saying it took 2 minutes for Anita and for so many people who just learned how to use guided imagery, NLP, some ways to engage with their pain proactively and start to change what it feels like, because these are signals. There is no sharp needles. This is a construct, right, in our mind. And so that sharp needle is as real as that loose spaghetti, right? And that's mine, and people dealing with pain. And for her, that's what it was. For other people, the imagery may be very different, but she was the one guiding the way. I wasn't telling her, now it has to be yellow, it has to be this, it has to be that. She was the one, well, this would feel better, well, that would feel better. And instead of just being there, you can see if you could move a little bit, that would feel better. Within 2 minutes, right, she was at a 1 instead of another 8. Everybody was like, how come this is not taught all over the place? And my answer is what I mentioned earlier, which is like, because there's no money in it. And because we're in a healthcare system right now that is milking people, that is, unfortunately, this is like, you know, sick care, this is not healthcare. And unfortunately, these kind of practices, as effective as it may be, there is sadly, even though there's quite a lot of research behind it, they're not promoted as much as they should, because again, there's nothing to sell behind it, right? So these are the 2 tips or practices I'd like to share, which for me, you know, were very powerful.
Those are beautiful stories. Thank you for sharing them.
All right, so we went a little over time.
We did.
Right, which is okay. And anything else you'd like to mention, Amari, before we wrap it up? Or not?
No, I just want to mention, you probably already mentioned this before when we started. Please submit any questions or comments that you have. This topic for today came from Armani. She sent us in a question, and we answered it. And so if you guys have any questions about pain management, chronic pain, healing journey, please send us a question. We would love to do a topic on it every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amari. We'll be back next week at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Cairo, Paris time, for those of us on the other side of the pond. We'll put all the links in the description. Thank you so much, Amari. You have a beautiful day. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Be
Bye,
well.
everyone.
See you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.